Hi everybody, hey, this is Kyle here. Just probably already know what the video is going to be about. Just want to tell you a little bit about me, what's happened on that day, and what's happened a little bit afterwards, and what has been going on with my life since then. Before we get started, I can tell you, I'm married to Paula, a wonderful wife. I was married before, and as this goes on, I tell you, you'll figure that out, or I tell you as it goes on. Uh, May 22nd, my wife then, Lori, was all up in Kansas City at a dog show, and on the way back, I knew there was going to be a storm brewing up down here in the Joplin area, and by the time we got home, started hailing everything, and then when we got home, got a call from the daughter, was looking for her grandparents, which is Lori's mom and dad. And I told him, said, well, they're probably at church about that time. I said, we just got home. And she said, you haven't heard what happened, have you? I said, no, we haven't. She said, tornado hit St. John's Hospital. And I asked him, so, I said, what way was it heading? He goes, east. So initially then, I was thinking of Lori's mom and dad, because they was east of the hospital. And of course, I was thinking of my mom, which lives in Dunaweg, which is east of Joplin. So we got all together. I hightailed into town, tried to get a hold of everybody. Phone lines are all down. Cell phone towers are down. Couldn't call anybody. So we come up to where Lori's mom and dad's place was, and it was just, a disaster area. So we knew good and well it probably ended up hitting our house. And you didn't know where anything was. Didn't hardly tell nothing. So I did finally figure out where their street was. I got down, had to walk down to where their house was. There's nothing but a concrete blocks around. The house was all completely gone. And I did end up talking to some neighbors that my mother-in-law Janet and my niece, which was living with her at the time, they were found. They went on down to the park where they was telling everybody to go. And they couldn't find my father-in-law. Didn't know where he was. The last thing we knew, he was in the bedroom. And I walked all around the place, couldn't find him. And I just prayed that I didn't want to find him. Because I figured he was in the bedroom, house completely gone, figured knew what happened. So finally, the different family members finally showed up and looked around, couldn't find nothing. My wife finally found her way, and she was really upset. So I figured it's about time to go find my mother-in-law, Janet. And finally found her. We finally found her. Got her to the hospital, her and Lauren. Then we ended up getting him back to my house, or Lori's and I's house, taking care of them. And then on the 23rd, I finally get a phone call from my brother-in-law and found my father-in-law, which is probably about 30 feet from the house, underneath a bunch of framing of the house and stuff like that. So that was there. And then that night, we ended up having another major storm come through. Big tornado warnings, tornado sightings. So everybody was safe then. And then the next day, I usually get up and usually go up to the store early in the morning just to drink coffee and talk with the guys, let Lori and her mother and everybody sleep in. And got back home. My wife was out on the front porch talking to a coworker. Was talking about her dad. And I figured, okay, I just let them talk. And went back in the house trying to look up my mother-in-law's insurance company to find out what she needs to do. About 20 minutes later, I went back out on the front porch. My wife was laying down. She was unresponsive, wasn't breathing, basically nothing. Ended up calling 911. They got out, tried to resuscitate her. The next door neighbor was actually an RN. He come over, tried to help out as much as he could. And with me taking that EMT course, I knew without the oxygen within a certain period of time, it was not good. So when they loaded her up on the ambulance, and it took so long to get to the hospital because you had to go clear around Joplin, the long way, 6 seconds to get to the hospital. So, and I knew pretty much right then that she's going to pass. And so when the doctor come and got me after I got there, told me she did not make it. So said had a blood clot to the lung. And yeah, my daughter finally got there, or our daughter finally got there. I had to break the news to her. So, I mean, that's basically what happened all that day. And so, just life is going on. I mean, things good, things bad, dealing with Lori's passing stuff. And just like to reach out to you all that are married, even been married a very short time, married for a long time, it don't matter. What Lori and I done back before this all happened, we sat down and we talked. Said, what do we want the other person to do if we pass? And we both said, go on with your life, meet somebody, get remarried. If you find somebody you fall in love with, want to spend the rest of your life with, you got their blessing. My blessing, I got her blessing. And I'll tell you what, it was weird. First date I went out on, it was weird. I mean, just strange. I mean, just wasn't no guilt or anything like that, but Lauren and I, we was married for almost 25 years. So being with one woman for 25 years, then go out with somebody else, it was just weird, the best I can put it. But all I can say to you all is, if you're married, you haven't sat down and talked about it, just talk about it. Because, I mean, it helped me out quite a bit, because I didn't feel guilty or anything like that when I started dating again. So, time went along, so then ended up meeting Paula, ended up falling in love with her, and that's how that went. Just be prepared for anything. Appreciate what you have, good or bad. I mean, it all can't be good, and it's all not going to be bad. So thank you very much, and thank you for listening to me. Bye-bye.
Hi, y'all. So today is May 22nd. It is the 9th anniversary of an EF5 tornado that came through Joplin, Missouri, and took the lives of approximately 161 individuals. My dad was one of them. At the time of this tornado, I was living 5.5 hours south in Hot Springs, Arkansas. My daughter, my youngest, had just graduated from high school, and my parents had come down, of course, for the graduation, which was on the 20th of May, and they came back up here on the 21st of May. And then my dad had to work on Sunday evening, which was May 22nd, 2011. Later in the evening, uh, tornado sirens, I guess, started going off, and he was the acting manager on duty. Um, it was Sunday night. I guess that was a typical thing. So, he did the protocol that was required of him and then some. He led more than a dozen people to safety from all accounts that were given to us from those people that were saved into a training room. Um, then I think it was probably just moments before the tornado. It might have been really, it couldn't have been long, maybe 40 seconds. My dad had to have seen the tornado out in the distance. My dad had to have seen the tornado coming when he went to unlock a door. At that time, Home Depot's protocol was to lock the doors when everyone was in safety. I'm not sure what the thinking was for that particular protocol, um, but my dad, being who he was, he heard knocking, and these are accounts from the folks that had already been in the training room, and he had heard knocking, and so he went to unlock the door to let folks in. And it was a young man with two young children. They made it from what I was told about 30 feet from safety, getting to the training room. Um, and the walls collapsed and killed all four of them. Both of them were, what do you call it, Army veterans. They had both been in the Army. My dad had been in the Army. The father of the two small children had been in the Army. So I can picture in my mind how it went down between the two of them and trying to get those babies to safety. I know that they fought hard. I have no doubt in my heart that they fought hard to get those children to safety. Um, one of the things that I took from the way that my father died is that he died the way that he lived. When I was growing up, there were countless times that we would stop somewhere. My dad would pull over the side of the road, even, and we'd be sitting in the truck or the car, depending on which we were in, and we'd be sitting there for a minute because my daddy was going to help whoever it was that was in need of help. This is the way that he had been his whole life, as far as I knew, at least the whole of my life. This is the way he had been. My mom, God love her, she sometimes found it aggravating just because we might be wanting to get to someplace or maybe expected at someplace. But that's just the way my dad lived, and he died the way that he lived. And he absolutely died a hero. He had saved, by the accounts that we were given, more than a dozen lives. There was one young man that came to the funeral or the memorial service, and when he came to pay his respects and he shook my hand, he told me that if it weren't for my father, he would have died. He was planning to leave the store. He was wanting to get out of Dodge. And my dad actually, pretty much, I can picture my dad told him in no uncertain terms, no, he was not going to leave, and made him get into the training room, and that saved his life. So I know that there are folks out there that I don't know and that I've maybe even never met that, that he did help. So that's a nice thing, I suppose, to have in that type of moment. But I'll tell you what, the events of May 22nd, 2011 changed my life forever. I drove up here that night, obviously, got in the car, we came up, got here about midnight, maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, to be with my mother and to help wherever I could help and do whatever I could do, which really there wasn't a lot I could. I did walk up to Home Depot, and I say walk up because I had to go far south of Home Depot because the roads were blocked, and by that point even the National Guard were in place. There had been some, of course, horrible looting or looting attempts going on. And so thank God for the National Guard. Thank you guys, if any of you were watching that were here. And if you aren't the one that was here, thank you for your service anyway, because that means the world to me that while my father and the other deceased were still in Home Depot, until a path could be cleared to get them out, that the National Guard were there to protect the sanctity of where they lay. Home Depot was utterly destroyed. It took the largest hit from my understanding of the tornado. It started out as an EF1, not very far outside of Joplin. I don't remember the exact location now, but it really wasn't all that far outside of Joplin. And by the time it hit Home Depot, it was an F5. In its path, it had destroyed um, everything. I mean, just everything. This was a super destructive tornado. This was not one of those tornadoes in which you could drive around and see odd things. You know, like, for example, there was a terrible tornado over in Kansas once when I was a kid, and we happened to come up to Kansas from Arkansas to visit my mother's side of the family, and we drove through that town. And there was a house that the tornado that had gone through that town had literally picked this house up off its foundation and slid it over right next to the foundation. There was a tree that was peeled open like a banana with a pair of scissors stabbed down the middle. All these different things that you can see that happens in tornadoes. In this particular tornado, there was none of that. Everything was destroyed. The only thing that wasn't destroyed in its path was the tornado rooms that people did have. There were a lot of lives lost on that particular day, and part of that reason was because this area is, or at one time was, a mining area. They mined zinc in this area, and because of that, basements are really just not an option for most people in this area. And besides that, the water table's very high. So there again, basements are, they're just really not an option in this area. So a lot of people lost their lives because there was really no warning. There was no warning to this thing because it hit the ground, and in a matter of just a few minutes, it was on the other side of Joplin, already having destroyed everything in its path. When my mom called me and said she couldn't get a hold of my father, I looked on the TV to see what I could find, and there was nothing except for the Weather Channel. And the Weather Channel was reporting from Joplin as close as they could get, which was really up the street from Mercy Hospital. At one time, it was known as St. John's, and people who are from around here still call it that. But it was Mercy Hospital, and so that was all that you could see. 5.5 hours south of here, that's all you could see. And so I told my mom, I said, Mama, it don't look good. It does not look good. The hospital's destroyed. And so I started on my way up here. And, to make a long story short, I'd gone back home because at one point I'd received word that everyone had been accounted for. And while everyone had been accounted for, I was not told that my father had been found dead. So I had turned around and went back home. So my mother didn't have to worry about us trying to get up here. And then it was maybe an hour after that, not even, and I get the call from my mother that she needed me to come home. So I came home to be with her. The next day is when I took her to where FEMA was setting up. We were, in fact, there before they were even set up. Nobody was there. It was just us. I had found out that that's where they were going to be, and I was told that that's where they were planning to take the bodies, which ultimately they did not. They actually took them to a different location, and they weren't disclosing the location, which I found a little creepy, so I did find out where it was. But we did what we could to try to get my dad home as quickly as possible. And it wasn't until the following Friday that I was finally able to get him home. During that week, my sister was driving here from Arizona with my dad's mother, whom we just lost this past Sunday. And anyway, they were on their way here, and my mother was semi disabled at the time, so, and devastated, obviously, just devastated. My parents' 43rd wedding anniversary was on May 23rd. Um, they didn't get to see 43, which is unfortunate because they had been through quite a lot in their marriage and had made it that far. And my dad was my mother's everything, and my mother was my father's everything. And then all of a sudden, she no longer had him. So I had made a commitment to her um, at that time, whatever day that was, sometime during that week. I told her that I would be here. I would find a way to get here to be with her, to take care of her. She, was so concerned about how was anything going to happen. I said, don't worry, I'll be here. It was 5 months later that I finally got a job offer from a different company, and they wanted to, hold an in-person interview. And y'all, it was really almost near to impossible to find a professional job up here at that time, with even in 100-mile radius. So many professionals were out of work due to this tornado for quite some time. A lot of professionals, everyone that worked at Mercy, just about everyone. I'm sure they still had a few folks that were still working, but there's a lot of folks, that needed a job and didn't have one. So it took a while, and when I got the call to go, to come up here for that interview, I went to my then manager and I told him what I was doing and what I needed to do and why. And made an offhand comment, that in a perfect world, I could just take my job with me to work from home and be able to take care of my mother. And so he set up a meeting with our mutual upper boss, and the next morning, and we discussed it with him. And that man that I owe everything to told me I had 1 month to get myself up here, um, which was just unbelievable to me. So, of course, I called the company I'd received the job offer from and apologized and explained what was going on. And I packed everything up, got rid of most everything because I just didn't need it. I was going to need to live here. So I got rid of everything just about. I just had a storage unit left and came here to take care of my mother. My life changed forever after that. Everything is different. And it'll never be the same. I'm not going to say it's worse, and I'm certainly not going to say it's better. It, it is certainly not what I had in my mind as to how I saw empty nesting, to say the least. It's not what I saw in my mind. And I do apologize. I'm having some allergies, and so it's making me a tad hoarse. Um, my dad and I had even had a discussion the morning after the graduation, just the two of us, and he had told me that he was going to need some help soon to take care of mom. And I asked him if he felt like there would be enough time for me to take a couple of years to be able to travel and, just not be a parent for the first time in many, many years. And he's like, yeah, I think we've got a good couple of years. And he was dead the next day. So, no, we didn't have a good couple of years. I did get here and uh, became life partners in essence with my mother. I spent the next 5 or 6 years with her before we lost her. I spent the month of May, the 5th year after. I think it was the 5th year. Yeah, it was the 5th year after the tornado. The 5th anniversary I spent in a hospital with my mother. She spent 2 days shy of an entire month in the hospital. All but about 5 days, 6 days of that was spent in ICU. So, due to these events, you know, well, let me just back up a minute. So, prior to all of this, I had not dated in over 10 years. I really had not had a very good time. I had been married before, and it wasn't great, obviously, so because we're not married now. But I wasn't interested in dating. I wasn't interested in anything like that in life at all. I was over it. I was totally over it. And then I think it was, oh gosh, I met Kyle. It was the first Sunday that my mother and his mother-in-law, Janet, went back to church, because you see they went to the same church. They knew each other, and they both lost their husbands of many years. And of course, they both took some time away from church. And then, interestingly enough, the Sunday that my mother felt that she was ready, so did Janet. So that's when I think I was officially introduced to Kyle, but we never had a conversation. I don't think it was until the following January, I believe it was. Um, God has a funny way sometimes of working in our lives. Actually, I don't know if it's sometimes, I think it's always kind of funny, kind of different, kind of odd. And there's a saying, hindsight's 2020, meaning you can see everything clearly when it's behind you. And during the time, that all of this happened, I couldn't see things clearly. I just knew I knew what I had to do, and I did it. Kyle started sitting down at church talking with me, and we got to know one another. And here we are today. The events that took place on May 22nd, 2011, led to my meeting a really wonderful individual. Um, Probably one of the most loyal people I have ever met in my life. So, like I said, God works in different ways. And I know that's not why my father passed. It's just interesting how my father used that as a way to bring a wonderful man into my life. So for that, I'm grateful, that I was able to meet him. But even to this day, 9 years after that event, my life is still very different, very different than what I had imagined it would be at this point in my journey of life. That whole week was pure adrenaline, I think. I really didn't begin to grieve for my father until I got back down south, and then it finally was able to come out. But I had a lot to do. I was taking care of Mama in those first few days, and then my sister got here, and my grandmother, and my brother-in-law, and my nephew. And so they were here then. Um, I was running some errands for my mother, like, going and getting the papers at the funeral home, and working on trying to get my father's body home. And on that Friday, we finally was able to get him home, and we're able to go and make our goodbyes, and send him off to be cremated, because that was his desire. So on Saturday, we had already set up services for Saturday, wishful thinking, really. I was just adamant that we were going to have my father home if I had to go get him physically myself. And that could be a story for a different time, and how FEMA handled everything very well for most people after the particular event that happened. But in our case, getting my father home was quite a fight. Which really didn't have to be that way. But I suppose I understand. On one hand, I do, and on another hand, not so much, but that's okay. We did get him home. And so on Saturday, we had his funeral or memorial services. And I had arranged for his military honors a couple of days prior to that. Um, we had over, I think it was over 250, maybe over 270 individuals show up to pay their respects for my father. Many of which he knew personally, and many of which he didn't know. There were a number of people from Home Depot that came to show support, people that he had known, people that he had worked with, and people that he had never even met. The regional vice president, I believe it was, he as well attended the funeral. And, there were a lot of people there just to show their support because of the way that my father ended up passing. He died the way that he lived. He absolutely did exactly what he always would have done. And what makes him a hero in my mind is um, his greatest fear in life were tornadoes. He was a different person from my mother, in as much as when they came together, my mother grew up basically or partly in Tornado Alley in Kansas, and eventually had moved into Colorado, where she met and married my father, who had never experienced a tornado. So he was pretty deathly afraid of tornadoes. He took them very seriously, and I know that when he was opening the doors to let a young man and his two young children in, he saw that tornado coming. There's no doubt. So that's my story from the tornado, and how it changed my life. I didn't know Kyle during all of these events. I knew I had met Janet, I had met Chuck. I didn't know them. I probably couldn't have picked them out of a crowd if I had wanted to. I had met them on short visits up here, where I attended church with my parents on Sunday before I'd head back down south. I didn't know them, so, but I knew of them. My parents were, they just thought the world of them. And so, um, when the pastor came and told us what had happened with Kyle's father-in-law, um, he never did tell us about what had happened with his wife a couple of days after the tornado. Um, so I didn't know that part then, not until much later. I just know that, it was a devastating blow to that church family, because there were a number of people quite affected by the loss of their house, loss of loved ones, and um, especially Chuck and my father, who were quite active in the church. It was a big loss. So on May 28th, we had my father's services. And on the next day, my youngest turned 18 years of age. We also drove back south. I could have stayed. My job had my back. They weren't, you know, I wasn't going to lose my job if I had stayed, but I felt that I really felt I needed to get away. It had been a very long week and a very difficult week, and I needed to be home. I really needed to be home, and I think everyone out there can understand that. So we went ahead and took off that afternoon after we had a small birthday party for my daughter, and we headed back down south. And it was 5 months later that I came up here, and I've been here since. It's the third time I've lived in this area, y'all. The first time was with my children's father, who was an Army recruiter, in fact, here in Joplin. The second time was when I moved to Webb City, and I went to Missouri Southern State College, which is now Missouri Southern State University. And this is the third time I'm living here. How about that? Please always know that you don't know when someone is going to leave this earth. You don't know when someone's going to pass away. Um, Death happens unexpectedly, and I can attest to that. It can happen to the strongest of people. It can happen to the smallest of people. I can totally attest to that. Be sure that you are always telling people Not always necessarily. I mean, but just be sure that you let people know how you feel. Don't wait for that moment to come that's just right, or hold it in because it sounds wrong to tell a friend that you care about them and that you love them. Tell people that you care. Tell them that you love them, because one day they're going to be gone, and it's going to happen quickly. And before you know it, even if you have warning, that moment of death is, it's just, it's there. And sometimes it's there when you don't know it's going to be there. So make sure to keep peace with folks. Make sure to keep peace with yourself. Make sure that you are ready for life, and make sure that you are ready for heaven. Just make sure that you're taking care of yourself each and every day, because you only have 2 days, and you may not even have all of that. And that is the biggest lesson I think I took away from losing my father in a tornado the way that I did. You just have to learn to be grateful for what you have. And it's not easy. Don't get me wrong, it's not easy. I am not perfect. I am not perfect by far. But I'll tell you what, I did learn to live today. My garden, I have it because I have always had a dream to have that. I've always wanted to grow my own food, but I have always had a black thumb. I've always killed everything I grew. And I used to say, well, one day I'll retire and I'll have time to do that gardening stuff. I'll do it when I retire. Well, I'll tell you what, retirement hit me suddenly and out of the blue, unexpectedly, and I found myself retired. And after about the first 3 months of it, and feeling depressed and the doldrums from not knowing what to do with myself, I decided I was going to make this thing happen. I was going to learn how to grow my own food. And that's how I actually ended up not starting the channel, but going forward with a channel. The channel kind of got started by accident, really. I really opened the account only to show my dog, which is my very first video, and how he behaved every day that I was on location, which was the summer after the tornado. I had to go back down south for a job that went on for about 3.5 months. I had to be in Little Rock. So I was back to driving up here every other weekend to do what I needed to do here for mom, and then going back down south. So, and he had the funniest routine, and someone that on the client side of where I was working wanted to see what he was doing, and I actually was able to capture it. And the only way to share it with her was to put it on YouTube, because it was too large to put anywhere else. And so that's how that first video ever went on YouTube. And it was later that other folks that I had met because of YouTube knew that I was beginning this process of transforming our backyard into a raised bed garden. And they asked me to show, the progress and how things were going. And that's how this all started, really. So, yeah, God, God definitely works in some different ways. And you always have to kind of remain open to find out what exactly he's up to. Just be ready, because he's got wonderful things planned for you. And it isn't the bad moments, it's what you do with those moments that make the difference in your future. Hey, y'all. We are bringing a video to you today to talk about what we've been through as far as the Joplin tornado on May 22nd, 2011, which is 9 years ago today. So we thought that we would bring to you our story and how that event changed our lives. Why don't you tell the folks, after, all of the differences and all of the changes that happened from the tornado, losing Lori to having Janet staying with you and Lauren, to the first Sunday going back to church with Janet, which happened to be the same day that Mama decided she was comfortable enough to go back to church. And I know that introductions were made that day. That was the day that you and I met. We just didn't really talk until probably February after, because you were dating someone, I think, at that time. Was it March?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But when we actually met that particular day, did you notice me that day?
I didn't notice you that day at all. I noticed you before that.
Before that?
Yep, I noticed you when I was still seeing the other girl. I know.
Oh,
I noticed you.
okay. I didn't know that, y'all. That's news.
No.
You did? That's news to me. Go ahead.
Yeah, basically the first time, say when I brought Janet back to church, that was the first Sunday that you and your mother came to church too. And your mom and Janet knew each other pretty good from church and stuff. So that was a nice event to see, I guess, is how you put it. Uh, no, I noticed you. I didn't know who you was. I figured maybe it was in relation to Sue, and more or less nothing went on. Other than that, then I see you in church. And then come about first part of March, I saw you sitting back there in the back, drinking coffee before Sunday school. Sat down and started talking to you, and I realized that we're the younger one of the old congregation.
True that. I didn't. Yeah.
It is an older congregation. I was 48, and I think you was what 41, something like that.
Not yet 41. I was 40.
40. So, but got to sit down, just say hi, talk to her for a little bit, and a very interesting lady to talk to. Sit down. And I said, "Well, I got to get to know you better. Got to get to know you more."
How'd that go for you?
Took a long time. So, but I never did think I could ever get this girl to go out with me. A girl 8 years younger than me, as pretty as she is, and still is. Why she wants to have anything to do with me, old, fat, nothing.
Oh, please.
But no, we took it slow, took it, chased a lot, I guess.
You chased a lot.
However you want to put it. Wasn't interested in anybody else, which was a good thing.
Not that I didn't try to get you to see other folks.
Yeah.
I tried.
She kept on saying she wasn't married type. I said, "Yeah, that's okay. Wasn't want to get her married right now anyway." So, but we want. After talking to you for a little bit, it took a little while just to go somewhere with me, didn't it?
Oh, it was clear to the next. Well, I don't know. Did we go to North Carolina that year or the year after?
Oh, that year.
Well, as friends, we traveled to North Carolina. He invited me to go along on a trip he had planned, and I hadn't been back to North Carolina. Gosh, at that time, I can't even remember how many years. It had been 17 years, I think, and I really wanted to see North Carolina again. So as friends, we made that trip. But as far as the date goes, I think it was clear to the next February. Like almost a year, maybe, after we met. We went to eat for Valentine's Day or something.
Probably something like that.
Yeah, but I don't know if I'd call that a date. I just consented to go so he wouldn't be lonely.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
But, no, we made probably drove about 2,000 miles without wanting to kill each other. So I thought, well, we can travel pretty good together. So
yeah, as long as I don't watch your driving, we're good.
I remember she said before we go, we said, "I'm gonna do most of the driving. I'm gonna do most of the driving."
I said night. At night, I would not be driving during the day.
I said, "Oh, okay." And no, she didn't do most of the driving. So.
No, I didn't. You did just fine, and it was during the day. I didn't have to drive through the night. Right?
I had to make a quick trip back here. One of our elders at church passed away, so.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we had to cut that short because Mama needed to go to the services.
just, I mean, from then on, it just took a while, took a little time, just seeing each other, spending time together, and I think we both kind of figured on getting a little bit more serious.
Well, definitely after Mama was in the hospital that time. That was 5 years almost. Well, no, it was the fifth anniversary was while she was in the hospital that year. And Kyle was there for me every single day. I mean, every day without fail. As a friend, he was there for me. So I think it was probably that was the changing point or the turning point for me.
And when you care for somebody and somebody's in that deal, you try to be there the best you can. And I guess I did all right.
You did good. I had nobody else. You know that. Well, other than my cousins that they were supporting me, but I mean, I was still on my own, you know. So in the evenings when I had to be here by myself worrying about my mom and you were here hanging out, it was comforting.
I got to the point I really did fell in love with her, and I just wanted to be with her forever. Sickness and health, to death do us part. And
Little did he know that I would not consent to him dating anyone else after me. Yes, folks, we did have that conversation, did we not?
We did.
Yeah.
We did. And I got to sit down and talk about it. I mean, both of y'all might be healthy as can be. I thought Lori was healthy. I thought she was going to be a ripe old lady. And 54 years old. I mean, just like that. I mean, you're just one heartbeat away from going to meet the Lord. So, and that's why I tell Paula. I said I'm one heartbeat away from going. And
So am I.
She is too, and she thinks I'm gonna live to be a ripe old man.
A ripe old lady. Sorry.
Ripe old man. I said, nah, don't bet on it. Don't bet on it. And came pretty close here.
A year ago, February.
Yeah, came pretty close.
Yeah, it was kind of like being with Mom in the hospital all over again. There for a few days. Thank God it was only really just a few days, but yeah.
Went to bed, woke up in ICU. Thought I was in a bad dream when I woke up. I go, what in the tarnation am I doing in here? So,
That's what gets you, folks, for not taking your medicine. Just keep that in mind.
Yep.
That's what it boiled down to, isn't it?
Yep. That's what it boiled down to.
Yep. So if you need medicine to stay alive, take it. And I'm speaking to somebody specifically, and I think they know who it is.
No, I mean, I think we got a pretty good marriage. I mean, has her bumps in the road, rocks in the road.
Because I'm a snot.
Huh?
Because I'm a snot and I don't tolerate anything.
You gotta take the good with the bad, I guess. Well, I always look at it.
Don't get me wrong, he's a snot too, y'all.
I'm a pain in the butt.
A serious pain in the butt.
Don't think I'm a sweetheart of a guy, because I'm not.
Oh, you're more sweetheart than not, but he has his moments. We all do, I guess.
Like I say, you gotta appreciate what you have in life, especially your soulmate. I mean, everything else, your house, your cars, your whatever. I mean, yeah, it's important. I'm not saying it isn't, but it's just a house. It's just a car. It can be replaced. I couldn't replace Lori.
Yeah.
Lori's Lori. Once she's gone, I can't replace her. Paula ends up passing away before me. I can't replace her because she's Paula. And she can't replace me because I'm me.
Yeah.
You go on with your life the best you can. I think your spouse would want you to, whatever's best for you, to get on with your life. I think they'd be with that, be for that 100%. I know that's what I'd want Paula to do. If she want to do something, that's how she's dealing with her life. If I pass away, hey, go for it.
Yeah.
If she met somebody, whatever, hey, great. If that's what she wanted, great. If she doesn't, hey, that's great too. I mean, whatever is best for her. Like I say, just appreciate what you have today because tomorrow it could be gone. I mean, life isn't perfect. Never has been, never will be. The only time it's going to be perfect is if you go up to meet the Lord. When you do pass on, then everything's going to be perfect. I mean, the way we believe, if you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, make him number one in your life, that's where you're going to be. So, I mean, if you haven't done that, I recommend you do it. Get yourself straight with the Lord, and everything will be great.
Yep. Just like I said, be sure you're ready for heaven.
That's one thing Chuck, Laura's dad, was saying: be ready, be ready, be ready. Every time you say be ready, and what he's saying is be ready for the Lord to take you or him to come back again. And I'm saying this for him, it says be ready.
Yeah, that's another subject. In case people have questions on how to do that, you can certainly leave a comment below, and we'd be happy to answer your questions and help you down that path.
That's about all.
Yeah. So 9 years ago, a course was set in which we find ourselves at this particular crossroads at this particular time. And, the events of 2011 on May 22nd, they all boiled down to us meeting and where we are today. It's hard sometimes, but you can find the positive even in the worst situations.
If this bad thing didn't happen, I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you today with Paula and everything. Do I wish it wouldn't have happened? Yeah, I wish it wouldn't have happened. But you know what? It happens. Things happen in life, and life goes on. You got to make the best of it. And this is the best of it right here. I'm getting to spend my life with a beautiful, beautiful lady, very caring lady, very loving lady.
Are you still sucking up for more salsa?
Well, yeah.
Okay, guys, thank you for joining us and listening to our story. Have a blessed day, and we'll see you next time.